Let's hone in on insulin. So as we're going through this process, insulin's going to naturally come down. Let's talk about why it's such a bad guy in the full picture here when it comes to weight gain and chronic disease.
So the first part is insulin is a dictator for resources of food. It says you ate too much, okay? You consumed too much. And as our ancestors are thankfully wired to take that extra resource and put it away for a time where you don't have as much. That's what insulin did. It stores it. It insulates you. So when you've consumed more than your body needed, which is going to happen to everybody, insulin tucks it away, puts the first storage in your liver, just tuck it over there till I need it, and I'll get it right out of there as quickly as you need it back. So very easy in and out door for storing some of that glucose into the liver. But if that liver gets full and you've got the glucose all stored, now it's going to string some of those sugars into a much more long-term storage called fat. It'll make triglycerides out of that excess amounts of blood sugar. And insulin also stimulates that, says, okay, we're out of storage for the easy stuff. We're now going to go into long-term storage, which is fat. And it'll put some of that fat in the liver, but it puts a lot of it in your fat cells, in your adipose cells. And all of that is absolutely how we're designed. But there should be a place where you undo it. And in our world of abundance and easy access to food and never going a few hours without food, the indoor, putting the storages in is overused, and they just do not allow that to come out. But what else is happening when the insulin is constantly made is insulin, it grows things. And it certainly grows those fat cells. You'll stretch them to capacity, and then you might even be saying, okay, now make me some more fat cells. But it also grows things like an inflammatory response, like a cytokine or a signal that will start to grow things like skin tags, or it will turn over the layers of skin quickly, and you'll find some creases in their antecubital area or the back of their neck. This is the danger that you can see insulin resistance across the room, which is you're growing stuff you shouldn't be growing. Yes, insulin makes you fat, but it also grows things like skin tags and this overgrowth of skin on top of things like, that cancer growth does a little better when you give it insulin, especially extra insulin. There are several cancers that we know clearly linked to that chronic state of making a little bit too much insulin for a decade. So it wasn't a massive, knock on the door, you got a problem. It's this little sneaky thing that you're just making a little extra insulin, and then it's more, and then you got that little, notch in your belt that went up, and then your brain's not like processing as fast. All of that was debris being put into the body, not being swept out, and a stimulus of a growing pattern that grows the chronic disease.
Okay, so we have weight gain, skin changes. You mentioned changes with our processing of the brain. What other symptoms can somebody look for if they think they might be headed into this territory we've been talking about?
Insulin resistance, yeah. Honestly, they cannot go very long without food. That because that insulin is so high, it's using the glucose that's in circulation, and then as soon as that glucose dips down a little bit, whether your body stored it in storage or you used it as energy, they get hungry. And that sugar goes up and down and up and down. And that is the most dangerous part of why insulin resistance constantly grows is you ask the patient, why do you eat so much? Why do you eat so often? They'll tell you, I feel hungry. And they do. That insulin will do that. When you're looking for symptoms of, let's just take a teenager, they should not have insulin resistance, but it is rampant all over that age group, that generation. And by right after puberty, it wasn't just, a few extra pounds of pudge to get you through the growth hormone. These teenagers have 50, 60 pounds of fat mass on them. And it came from excess insulin. And you watch them in the wild and say there's food in front of them. dang, they want to eat every 2 hours. And society feeds it to them. I think that's probably the most common symptom that doesn't get recognized. And, when you ask an insulin resistant patient to say, well, just go on a low fat diet, just stop doing that. Oh, that insulin hormone is going to make your life hell. It will keep you hungry. It's only going to give you a tiny little bit of resource, and then it's going to, protect itself, saying, no, this is for when you're really hungry, when you're really starved, and your blood sugar is still a little too high. We're not going to let that out of the storage bin, which is why, the off ramp for this nightmare of a cycle is just use a different fuel. Just go to the fat as your fuel instead of those carbohydrates. And then insulin it's not obsolete, but it's just downgraded as the hormone of importance when they're on a ketogenic state.
Well, let's take it to the blood vessels. Somebody who is spiking blood glucose, like you talked about earlier, you're going to have that response plus the increase in insulin that follows it. Heart disease, number one killer right now. Let's connect this together.
Right. So you put that blood, let's just stay with those little red blood cells in circulation. And when they are constantly around extra sugar, those red blood cells inside the blood vessels get sticky. We call it glycated. The glucose gets stuck to the little hemoglobins, and that's called a glycated hemoglobin A1C, which is a average measurement, it's a math equation of how much is your blood sugar. And that's not the only thing getting sticky. The walls of the artery are getting sticky. The little lining that goes down the artery walls, like a Teflon protector, it's called a glycocalyx. And when sugars touch that over and over again, the glycocalyx goes from this beautiful, lovely carpet protecting your blood vessels to a carpet like in a fraternity house, like it's just mashed and full of traffic and beer and whatever else goes into a fraternity carpet. Meaning it's not doing a good job. It's not protecting those walls anymore. And as that glycocalyx gets destroyed, the chronic presence of insulin also made it difficult for you to make that glycocalyx. So now you've got one two punch. The sugar going into the body caused it to get sticky, and the protectors can't grow because of that signal from an insulin state, which doesn't let you repair at the rate you used to. This leads to the cholesterol that should be being recycled back into your liver. Well, it just can't get back into the liver. The liver's full, and it's not got as many receptors recycling that cholesterol. So the cholesterol says, well, no problem. I'll just go park over here. And it sneaks out of that blood vessel and hangs out in the wall of that artery. Boy, that's where the beginning of the end. I mean, it gets calcified. The body says, you do not belong here. Get that cholesterol back to the liver. What are you doing in my space? And the white blood cells will try to phagocytize it. It'll try to eat it up and, move it into the right spot. But it can only handle a tiny amount of that. And the longer those folks spend with high blood sugars, high insulin, and then the cholesterol, which is an incredibly important resource for our brains and bodies, well, it can't get to where it's going. And now you're parking it in one of the worst places, which is an artery wall.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
Your physician is never going to care this much. They're not going to study you this much. You have to study you this much. That morning fasting blood sugar, when it only gets to 95 in the morning, you got problems. That's not normal. Yes, you're healthy.